All right, Entree Architect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for the Entree Architect Context and Clarity live conversation for Thursday, February 17th, 2022. Thanks for joining us. As you get here, say hi. Let us know that you're here and let us know where you're joining the conversation from. If we've never met before, my name's Jeff. I'm in Indianapolis and I come here every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for one reason, so that we can find clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect. Doesn't matter if you're the employee of a firm or you own your own firm. Maybe you've circled a date on the calendar and you said 2022 is my year and you're on the runway to starting your own thing. Or maybe you have owned your own firm for a year or 10 years or 29 years and you're starting to rethink or reimagine what that firm could or maybe even should be. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, they all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture, and they're all the need to know topics for the success of small firm architects just like you. As usual, I am joined for these Context and Clarity live conversations by my co-host, Katharine MacPhail. Hi, Katharine.
Hi, Jeff.
How are you today?
I'm great. I'm going away this afternoon, so I'm taking a very rare few days off.
Why are you going away?
I help run this fiddle camp, or I just mostly do what she asked me to do. Anyway, so we're gonna go play fiddle, Scottish fiddle, and have some fun.
Nice. Very good. One day we will have Katharine MacPhail live playing
Mhm.
Scottish fiddle for
You will
us.
never have that. You'll never have that. But if 7 other people wanna join me, then yeah.
Okay.
I can only play
Fair.
with 7 other people. I can't play by myself.
Okay. No solos. All right.
No solos.
Fair enough.
I am
We'll
not a
keep
solo
trying.
player. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll keep pressuring Katharine and see if we can eventually get her to break out into a solo role. But that sounds like fun. I'm glad that you're
Yeah.
going to be able to go away. Let's see who's here with us. I'm looking out there. For some reason, Romper Room popped into my head. Romper, Stumper, Bumper, Boo. I see Brian McCartney joining us from YouTube. Brian's over in Vermilion, Ohio. And it looks like on my screen, he is the first in, which means that he wins the John Kenny Memorial Crocheted Bathtub that we give away every day for the first person into the conversation. So, Brian, thanks for joining us. Congratulations. Chris, I see you over there in Massachusetts. Kurt is the Urban Collab Architecture. He's over on Twitch. He's up in Flint, Michigan. Louis, welcome back from Richmond, Virginia. Ken in Detroit area. Barry, welcome back from Scotland. Luciana, welcome back from Massachusetts. Janine from Arizona. Margarita from South Florida. Mark Arlepage has joined us. He said he thought that Katharine would be the house band for the Entree Architect annual meeting
We haven't
down in
worked out the
Austin.
contract yet. No, it's
Oh,
November. It could happen.
boy, the agents are getting involved at this point.
Yep.
Anytime the attorneys get involved, it gets hard. Maybe Katharine will become the
Maybe.
house band. She and 6 of her closest Scottish fiddle friends. Rod says, do a solo. So low, I can't hear it. My dad always used to say that.
I
So
like that
Rod's
one.
dropping dad jokes on us all the
I'm
way
gonna
from
use that
Monroe,
this weekend,
Louisiana.
Rod. Thank you.
There you go.
I love it.
Those are good. We've got a whole dad joke segment going on now. That's great. And for anybody else that's out there, if you haven't said hi yet, say hi. We love to see where everybody is. As I'm looking around the room right now, we've already spanned the United States, and Barry's over in Scotland. So we've jumped across an ocean. It's great to see how our global community gets involved in these conversations. So make sure you say hi, even if you're just listening in or multitasking, and let us know where you are. It's fun to see where everybody is. And if you are, especially if you're over on Facebook, I don't think this is an issue from anywhere else, but if you're over on Facebook, that means that you're inside the Entree Architect Community Facebook group, which is a private community on Facebook, which means because of Facebook privacy policy, your name and likeness can't be let out of the group unless you give Facebook permission to interact with Restream, which is the platform that we use here. So if you're having trouble, if you're commenting right now and your comments aren't showing up on the screen, then Katharine has put a URL at the bottom left of your screen right now. You need to take that, put it into your browser. A few clicks later, you'll give Facebook permission to talk to Restream. So it's chat.restream.io/FB, like Facebook. And like I said, a few clicks later, and everything will be honky dory. I haven't said that in years.
Gee, why not, Jeff?
I don't
Hunky
know.
dory.
Today's the day.
Did you
Today
say
is the
honky
official.
dory or hunky dory?
I said
I like you
honky,
said
but it's probably
you said
supposed to be
honky.
hunky.
It's hunky,
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Hunky dory then.
Not to correct you on the air or anything like that, but if you're gonna say hunky dory, you might as well.
Okay, may as well get it right.
Right.
All right
I could
then.
be wrong, but
Well, whatever it is, if your comments aren't showing up, go to chat.restream.io/fb and give Facebook permission to talk to Restream, and your comments should start showing up after that. So, with that, again, thank you to everybody. I see, like I said, I saw Twitch, I see YouTube, I see Facebook. I haven't seen Twitter. Um, but that's we stream out. We call this our simulcast, which goes out to Facebook, LinkedIn. Have we seen LinkedIn yet? I don't think we've seen LinkedIn. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. So it's great to have all of you joining us today. Jake's joining us. He's doing the dishes and baking cookies while listening to the two architects in his ear. Well, it's great to have you here,
wow.
Jake.
It's weird to think of it
And
that way.
it is kind of weird to think of it.
Yes.
We're in somebody's ears.
I know.
Sorry, Jake. But it's great to have you. Thanks for joining us today and everybody else. Mark said a few minutes ago, I've lost his comment now somewhere in the scroll, but he says he's really looking forward to this conversation. I'm really looking forward to this conversation as well. We have a great guest today. She and I are on very similar wavelengths, although our applications are in different areas, but we resonate with each other. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and also celebrating her new work that is out. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So let me introduce the person that is in the green room that's eating the green M&Ms that we leave for all of our guests. Our guest today is an author, a coach, and a speaker. She's a thought leader in the organizational design and execution space that literally grew up in an architecture office. She's a consultant for architects across the country, and her new book is called Work is Art. Jane Walton, welcome to Context and Clarity Live.
Thank you. I've never been in a green room before, so maybe this is the first of many. Thank you.
Hopefully it is. Hopefully it is. And hopefully every green room you're in from here on out is furnished the way that we furnish our green room. And it's just the most pleasurable experience.
Thank you. That's very nice.
Yeah, you're in our nicest green room that we have. That's the one
you may very well be. Yeah. I want to go in that green room.
Anytime.
Well, fantastic. If you're wondering what's behind Jane on her left, you're right. That is snowy Kansas City behind her. So for those of us in the Midwest, it is a beautiful but cold winter, and that's what's going on back there. So you can keep in Kansas City. Really.
It'll be gone. It'll be 60 in 2 days. We just wait long enough.
Yep. Winter in the Midwest. Well, again, thanks. I really appreciate you joining us today. We have been talking about, and for those of you that may be new to Context and Clarity, what we do is we take what we're going to talk with our guest on Context and Clarity Live on Thursdays, and we shape other topics around that, related to that, for the other 4 days of the week. So we do Context and Clarity every weekday at 4. And so this week we've talked about what architecture is, how to design your work and your life, how to create culture in the workplace, even if you are a solopreneur, a sole practitioner. And of course, all of this leading up to this conversation with you today, Jane, talking about work is art and how architecture firms can be works of art. So I guess where I'd like to jump into the conversation is, we all know that art is in the eye of the beholder. So when we're creating our work as art, who gets to determine that? Who determines whether it's art or something else?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've all seen terrible art too. So you talk about in the eye of the beholder, and I think when I was writing this book and putting it together, is saying we're not thinking enough about it. I work with practitioners who spend so much time and energy on the window treatment, the doors that were used, the flooring. I mean, they'll switch out, that's not good. Let's try that one's not good. That's not good. But we're not doing the same thing as we're creating our internal space, and what we're focused on internally so we can deliver the way we want to externally. The question to me is, with these brilliant designers I work with, if you turn that focus and that lens internally, what would you create? Maybe what are you seeing today, but what would you like to create? Because I think if we spent the time and energy we do, that you all do, externally, internally, it could be a pretty amazing space. I mean, things could get really gorgeous. And I've been in those internal spaces that are gorgeous, and I've been in those internal spaces that are pretty ugly. And so it is intention and focus. And I think, this idea of work being art, what you're creating, certainly, even if you're a solopreneur, we're all partnering with people. I'm a solopreneur. So I partner with people, I partner with clients. Am I creating art in those relationships and those interactions so that from start to finish, it's a pretty great process? This kind of idea of exquisitely thought through and arranged. I think of that as a piece of art. And are we doing that internally as we're going through our days?
So does it start with being intentional about how we're working?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And having the time to do that. How many people sort of get in and start rushing, get into meetings, start rushing, and you're not sort of settling into especially even the day before, what's the next day look like? What do I need to be prepared for? I mean, the more you can be thoughtful and intentional, certainly the better the result's going to be, but the better physically and mentally you're going to be also. So it really is getting out of that reaction mode. I remember talking to an executive and I said, where do you add the most value here? And he said, they come to me when things are wrong and I tell them what to do. And he thought that was so much value that he was introducing, that he could, get them out of the chaos. And I thought they should be in a position where they didn't have to come to you for that. So how can you create situations and circumstances that those aren't happening, certainly as much as they are, but what are we spending our time doing? And the more intentional you can be, the better, again, the result for everyone. The better your business product's going to be, the better your relationship with your clients going to be, the better your relationship with employees, which then comes, it's design is all about innovation and ideas. And so creating that unity that we'll probably talk a little bit about, how do you create those conditions where everyone can do their best thinking and their best work?
You're muted.
Oh, I'm muted. Okay. So we have this a question from James Polk. How do you create an emotional response to your work as art? Do you feel like you just need to feel it in yourself that you have to be conscious about that you're trying to create art and then it will be more art-like, or what?
Right.
Would you say?
Well, I think I just got off the phone with a woman who was introduced to me. I was kind of a networking situation. And I left that meeting with a lot of appreciation, a lot of sort of awe, a huge connection with her. It's like, I want to know more about her. It was a really great moment, 30 minutes of moments. And so, what is that looking like and feeling like with you every day? And she was present. She was asking questions. I was present. We were asking questions. It just created a beautiful transaction, and something I'll remember versus working with someone that I'm not going to remember at all at the end of the day. I think it's those moments that you leave. So I don't know if that answered the question.
I think it does. I remember James talking about this morning on Clubhouse, and he said that to him, the best art that he has seen, or the best art that he has experienced, elicited an emotional response before he started, trying to break it down and understand it and things like that. And I think that does. It is the intangibles. You said
Mm.
memorable from that interaction. So I think that's a really nice way to put it. When maybe that's a good segue. James was starting that by talking about art, maybe in the art institute or the piece that's behind you. Um, as I was going through your new book, Work is Art, I of course noticed that you reference 5 principles of design as you start to apply them to organization and to design or to organizational design, I guess.
Mhm.
What are the 5 principles?
Yeah. So again, as I work with creatives, it's sort of their vernacular. And it certainly applies not only to art, but to how we're organizing and presenting our day, what we're focused on. The 5 areas are contrast, scale, focal point, unity, and rhythm. And the first couple are contract and scale. And so let me kind of back up. When I thought of writing this book, I wanted, a lot of it was, how do you create this unity within a group, a team? And that can be a client, you, and a banker, or a client, you, and a sub, or the contractor, certainly. And so when I thought about how do you create really good conditions that you can do your best work and get the best results and learn a lot and grow a lot, I thought you really, for a firm, you've got to, so that's focused internally, but I thought you really have to start externally, which is the contrast and scale. So the contrast is all about what makes you stand out? How are you different from other firms? And, I look at a lot of architecture web pages, and some of them are saying the same things. And some of them, your clients aren't going to understand a word you said, but it sounds beautiful. So that's something to kind of look at. But it's, how are you standing out? When someone comes to you and looks at you, what are they coming to you for? So how do you want to stand out, and how are you going to communicate that? That's important for, especially if you have folks working for you, that they can then deliver on that. So it's kind of getting clear on that contrast on how are you different, and does that even matter to your clients? Is that important to them? Or is there something that is more important to them? So it's looking at that kind of connection. Is what you're selling resonating with folks? And if it's something, it should be something unique, and you want to pull in the customers that will appreciate that and kind of see eye to eye with that you're in sync together. And then from there, I look at scale, which is, so how deep or wide do you want to be? Are you a generalist? Are you a specialist? So if you're a generalist, typically you're competing against a lot of generalists. And so you want to kind of plant deep roots locally where you are. If you're a specialist, so you specialize in, there was a woman I talked to, and she specializes in designing for hospitals and noise in particular. So really looking at the amount of noise in a room and what that does for someone's health. She was a specialist in that. So people are going to call her from probably all over the world on that, depending on how many folks are in there. So contrast and scale is really who you are and where is that going to take you. And I use the example, I'm a generalist, but my specialty is working with architecture firms. So I appeal nationally because, there's not a lot of people in my space. So it's kind of helping you think through that, because that's going to determine where you're focused, where you're investing, where you're establishing your expertise, so people are coming to you. So that first part of it, the contrast to scale, is really about your company, and you've got to be clear on that, so that when you get to the next point, which is focal point, And really, I feel like that is the foundation, definitely, of the book, of what I'm looking at. And the idea of focal point are, where do you want your people focused? I joke I do joke in the book, talking about there's mission statements, vision statements, values, core competencies. And I remember sitting in a group with some leaders of a firm, and they're like, oh yeah, we have our values. And I said, great, what are they? Yeah, we have our values, we use them. What are they? None of them could repeat them all. And I'm sure they spent a lot of hours, which is a lot of money, putting it together. Where I saw value show up for an organization when I worked in a firm was when we were going to fire someone and they weren't living up to a value. So that's where values came up. We certainly don't want that. Instead, I say, let's look at focal point in 3 areas that you want someone to focus on. And we can dig into that a little bit more if you'd like. You and I, when we talked, use Southwest as an example. My focal point is see, stop, run. I can explain that too. But the idea is 3. Don't have all these vision. The more the analogy in the book, like paint, too many bright, colorful ideas mixed together make muddy brown confusion. So you don't know what to do with it. You don't know what to act on. It's too much. So this idea of really getting focused, and if you can get the right 3 areas, people think of them every day as they're making decisions. They innovate on them. It really starts pulling people together in a really collaborative way. It's really kind of hard to do to get to those, because you want them to be meaningful, you want them to be actionable. And again, we can dig into that a little bit. But focal point is that middle part. And once you have that, the last part is then creating that symbiotic relationship internally. And again, for a sole proprietor like me, it's getting my partners. We all have business partners, sole proprietors that we're linked in, and I know a couple of mine are on the call today, so hopefully I'll do them some justice. But it can be applied both ways. But unity is really, your folks need to understand the business, what it takes to be successful, from finding work to winning work to delivering work to work, sustaining the test of time. And then the rhythm is this idea of constantly improving. So stopping at each moment. What did we learn? What did we like? What didn't we like? What did the clients say? Constantly getting better. Because where I'm seeing, as I'm working with firms, the stress comes from things that aren't working great. Good stress we love. And so bad stress is what's all over the news right now. And it's, when things could be running smoother and they're not. So anyway, unity and rhythm is really creating that really tight force internally that you guys can start accomplishing just amazing things together. But people need to understand where their time and energy should be focused. There's focal point. So are we done? That's the whole book.
Thanks for joining us.
And I will tell you, it's a little book when you get it, but you'll see it's very, very colorful in the graphics that it has. So it's really meant to be, I call it sort of a children's book for adults. A lot of graphics, only business book with no graphs, but lots of graphics and lots of, bright, wonderful colors. So
yeah. It really is. It's a nice volume to hold in your hand. It's a nice size, and it is nicely designed. I appreciate it for that. As you were running down the different principles: contrast, scale, focal point, unity, and rhythm. I know you work with firms on this, and you do workshops around this as well. Is there a hierarchy, or is it necessary to start at contrast and work through rhythm?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because you just have to be clear with that. And you may need to go back. There's, that's probably more focal point. You need to be really clear on who you are and what you're not. So when you're hiring folks, I've seen people hired and they said they talked this game and I got in, and that's not what the reality was. So I think part of that, especially for sole proprietors, and I will tell you, I've been in business 11 years now, And it's tougher than hell to get this first part right, you know, because am I everything to everyone? Am I something to, you know, where do I fit in? And so it's that testing. But I do think you need to start with that. Could you start with focal point? Perhaps. I mean, I think a lot of people probably, they may go through the first 2 steps and say, we've got this figured out. So jump on over, you know, you may not need to go through that enough. But I think, you know, the idea with contrast too, which I think is essential, is what are your clients saying about you? I was working with a firm recently and we're going through that, and the feedback from the clients, it was beautiful, and it certainly reinforced what they were wanting. So that says, hey, we're doing a good job, because that's what they're seeing. I think they had a few surprises that said, oh, we're even better in that than we thought. So I think getting feedback from clients is an important step. And I think that should be done pretty regularly too. So scales more, you know, again, today, as busy as firms are, they're just trying to get the work done. And if you're not thinking about how you want to scale and where you need to go, it's going to be put on the back burner for a while. So I think it's a really good exercise to go through in this. Yeah.
Well, and it seems like, and you basically just said this as well, though, in order to get to the focal point, I want to talk about yours in a minute, but it would really help to understand the contrast and the scale
Yes.
en route to get there. So I understand why you would say you need to go through in order. And you mentioned your three points, your 3 focal points. What, how did you come up with those?
Yeah, so this is funny. So we did the book, and brilliant designer and artistic collaborators. And one of the artistic collaborators was like, yeah, maybe we need to update your brand. Which is like, you know, I'm like, really? But of course we did. You know, it's kind of like when you redecorate one of your rooms and the rest of the place looks pretty shabby. So you got to work on that. Or you got a new haircut and you need now a new wardrobe to kind of go with that. And so it was a really great time to kind of refresh on stuff. So the funny thing was, so my name is Jane, and the young woman, I say young woman, and a lot of people are younger than me, you know, she wouldn't have grown up with the Dick and Jane books. So people who don't know the Dick and Jane books, it was this, and actually I was sort of past that prime, but they've lasted. I mean, people have kept them. So it was a primer, see Dick run, see Jane do this, see Spot this. But it had this rhythm, and it was sort of an innovator, as I studied it a little bit in children's books. So hers, so to be like see Spot run. Spot was the dog. And so we had this idea, she had this idea, see, stop, run. So the idea of see, stop, run, again, 3 areas of focus. In the book, I talk about stop, drop, roll. You know, it's memorable when you have 3. You start getting with 4 and 5, you start forgetting. It kind of dances on your tongue. It creates focus. It makes you sort out to get down to those 3. So it becomes really intentional. I talk about stop, drop, roll, turn on, tune in, drop out. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, you know, those we remember because there is a rhythm to it. So see, stop, run. What's really important when I work with a client is to look at different perspectives. I go in and I'm not only looking at the leader's point of view on how things are going, but what is the team next to them and the team below? What is everyone sort of, how are they seen? So it gives you context, it gives you perspective. So this idea of seeing is looking from inside out, outside in, client point of view. And I think that's certainly important as I go in to work with a company to really understand what the situation is. But I think, and again, your 3 areas should have applications internally and externally. So it kind of, it's not only a process I go through, but it's something that they'll reap a benefit from, to go through for their company. Stop, my biggest mantra out there, and you'll see it in the book, is there's too much noise in the workplace. There's too much, I talked about mission, vision, this, core competencies, this, and there's too much noise. And I was working with a firm the other day, and they had kind of a leadership level, and they said, what should their role be? And we talked about, maybe it's helping to develop that next generation. They're closest to it. Yeah, they'll be in charge of culture. And I'm like, but be careful, because you put someone in charge of something and they're going to start putting programs together. And then it gets muddy and confusion versus, how are we just interacting and working today? And what can we do to make it better, instead of creating program after program after program? So this idea of stop is things that aren't adding considerable value. I talked to a training and development association, and I said, what programs, if they went away today, no one would miss them? And they knew exactly which ones. They're being forced to keep them going, but which ones would go away? The other, I would say, especially if you start getting bigger, if there's an idea that comes forward, what's a vetting process to say, should we even spend time and energy on that internally? Is there a different way to do it? I've seen companies spend millions of dollars on things that even the committee that came together on it are like, why are we doing this? But the chief guy said yes, so we're going to do it. So this idea of really paring back, I'm a minimalist at heart. So really paring back, so what you are focused on, people will remember, it's going to be important to them, and it's going to add tremendous value. We want to look at that value. So strip away stuff that's just noise and really focus on what's essential. So that's really what the stop is about. And then run your business is the run part of it. So by doing those two things, and run your business with intention, with focus, running is really a lot about intention. So see, stop, run. And what's been interesting is we launched this brand in the last month or two, and so on LinkedIn, people have sort of caught on this see, stop, run. That's see Jane. Jane is great. You should hire Jane. So the people have gotten on board with this idea. So if you have kind of your three, it's the momentum that you can build from it. And that's what you want, is essential. We use Southwest as an example, and they have safety, on-time departure, and customer experience. And those are goals they have every day. Safety trumps everything. I always ask people what they think the next one is, and they think customer experience. And I said, no, it's on-time departure, because it's all about, you got to make money to stay in business. So even though they feel friendly and really great, they're all about the business. But as a client, you're not feeling that. But you are reaping the benefits of that. So that's the beauty of this idea of focal point. So if you can get those three, people, again, can innovate from them, can make it better all the time. That's what the key is there.
And you used the word intentional a minute ago, and I've been using the word purposeful a lot lately, which I think in this context they're very similar.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, many times we've removed ourselves from that. Things are happening to us. We're saying, I've told a story the other day, and the punchline of the story is, I got here because I kept saying yes, not because I wanted to, not because was the intent, but I just kept saying yes. I wasn't controlling the decision-making process. Of course I was in control. I said yes, that's on me, right? But it wasn't really intentional.
Yeah, if you even think of the word intentional, it just feels kind of grounding. And I'm having a lot of leaders get up very early in the morning. That's another podcast we can do on the circadian rhythm, because when we're best doing what throughout the day. And so he's getting up early. And I mean, when I first met with him, literally, and he's not the only one, I could mention a handful of folks, was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And by getting up and getting intentional in the morning where it's quiet and getting things, some things done so that he then starts his day off right because has it organized, he's gotten some stuff done, has changed everything. He said, 2 weeks later, he said, I haven't felt this calm in years. So intention is, we don't think we've got time for it, but you can't not have time for it.
What are the metrics you use to measure success? So how do you know when you're doing it? That's from John Jones.
You know what? I hate metrics, and I know they're important in the world that I'm in. I know they're in, but basically I will say, you're not losing people. That would be a metric. You're making money. You're not having to rework. The biggest frustration with the younger designers that I see is all the rework that's done because they didn't get the information they needed to. And that some of the leaders don't understand the time it takes, what technology can and can't do. Those are kind of the two things. So, success would be bridging that gap and understanding it. So, and you're sleeping better at night would be probably one of the best measures of success I would see out there. Health conditions aren't coming up. I mean, those are the things, those are the pieces of success that I have, and that you leave at the end of the day energized and not drained. That ultimately for me, you may have worked your ass off all day, but you leave energized and not, absolutely, no energy at all. I mean, just depressed. Actually, it's been happening some out there. That's my measurement.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, that's something that I think I've backed my way into that, but I think it's really important to be intentional, to use your word, about, is this something that energizes me or that drains me? I'm sure there's some sort of scientific term, psychological term for that. But to your point, I can work really hard all day on things that energize me, or I can be dragged down by the things that deplete me. And again, I make choices, right? That determine the direction that's going in. I think that's really good.
And I would say, when you talk about that, that's kind of where your strengths are, and what's not so much your strength that you have to do that, but you can have what your strength is. And if things aren't going well, what we're experiencing right now in your world is the delivery of product, to the supply chain part. So you can be energized by something, but this is pulling you down. So one of the things I would say is to look at, I did a blog post on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and it was, I think the primary role of a leader or someone who's in charge is to remove obstacles, things that aren't going well, make a decision, communicate something, deal with the elephant in the room, those things that are creating dissonance that don't have to be there. The burr in the saddle, as I described it, get rid of those, because we can have stuff that we love to do, but other stuff's draining us. So it's that distinction. So one of is strength or not strength, and then things that are getting in the way that don't have to get in the way. I'd look through those two lenses, I think.
So John also wanted to know, what's an example of a firm that's a work of art? Or what does that look like?
Say that again.
What's an example of a firm that is a work of art? So if someone has succeeded, I mean, I think you just touched on it there, so it might be the way people feel personally, but is it a physical thing? Is it like their office itself is, you walk in and you get a sense of being in a place where design matters, or does it look like anything?
I'm always looking at the person, and so you always hear about these genius designers, and it's just hell to work there. And I don't think that's success or a good design. I just don't. That doesn't resonate with me. I feel it when I walk in an office. I feel how people are interacting with each other, how they're interacting with me. I have probably one of the best clients I've ever had in the last couple of years. It's just been a complete joy working with them. And when I go in there, they're so gracious to me, and they don't have to be. And it's not that, they're afraid, you better be gracious to her. What, it is just this natural graciousness, and it comes from the top. And because of that and their interaction, the work is great because they're really, no one's afraid to, and I haven't been in all their meetings, but no, they're not afraid to speak up. I've been in actually a couple where they were working on stuff, and there's true collaboration that's going on. That's a work of art to me, that if you can really interact and pull people in and bring out the best in folks, that's going to bring out the best in design, in your design. That to me is a beautifully designed organization. And that's, what this book is about. It's not shiny and new. I've seen smoke and mirrors out there, some companies that's got, wow, I can't believe what they're doing. And you go in, it's nothing that you would think, and it's really not what you heard about. But I think it's you can feel it when you walk in the space. And it's not to say there's not going to be times where things are stressful and difficult, but you can certainly get through those times a lot better when you have that foundation together. So that's how I define a beautifully designed organization. And when I look at, these pieces and parts of the book, it's having these things in place and thinking about these things and talking about them with your staff, that it will as a result create a beautifully designed firm.
It seems to me that it really stems from clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me give you an example. When I was a young manager, I worked for a financial institution. Was not a fit for me. It was good to get back. I liked the creative space, but it was a great learning environment and actually a great leader. So I had I just been moved into the manager, hadn't been there long, and I liked taking new assignments. So I took this one assignment, and because they were open, they were growing, so they're opening up a new space. And at the time, I had a team. They were called support services, and they would scan checks and stuff. They were kind of the mailroom, and usually a group that was sort of invisible. And so we were going to set up this space, and we were going to have the toughest client in the whole place. And they were known for yelling and screaming, high stress, really difficult group. And one mistake could cost the company, $20 million, $100 million, because they could lose the client. Everyone was going after this client base, a lot of competition. So the stakes were high. So I brought this group in, and they kind of came over because they liked me. I liked working with them. And so what I did was I said, so here's the deal, guys. Here's our client base. And I talked about them. High stress, high this, but here's why. The stakes are high here. This is really important to them. It's important for the company. So what can we do to support them? And we studied, I had a book that they read. This is a group that typically, didn't get this kind of education and attention. We read articles, and I kind of let them go. So they, on their own, put these cards together that were laminated with information that'd be helpful for the folks moving in. One guy sort of memorized where everyone was and where the leaders were. They did all this stuff that they didn't have to do, but they were sort of given this background, and here's what we're here for, and here's how we can support them. And the group moved in, and within the first week, I had messages from managers going, what is up with this group? We have never had service like this before. This is phenomenal. It gets me teared up. They had these toolboxes the company had that had gift cards and stress balls and stuff. This team had tables full of stuff from this tool chest. So what it meant was giving them information. It wasn't just, hey guys, we got to get set up here. Here we go again. But giving them context. why this was important, who this group was. And this group rose to the challenge. I didn't tell them to do any of those other things, but by having that information that they wouldn't normally have, they created magic. And when, again, I get teared up, but when you look at the unity piece of this, the focal point for sure, I didn't give them the focal point. I didn't have that figured out then, but that's really was the seed of a lot of the stuff that's in this book. It's like, give people information that they need that will help them do better, help them be better, produce better work, better, help them collaborate. I mean, this group came together. One of the quietest guys, great gentleman, memorized everyone's name. I mean, he was amazing. And when I left, he's the one that said, if we had more leaders like you, we could change the world. So, they're looking for leadership to help them grow. They're looking for leadership to give them stuff, don't micromanage, but guide them, inspire them. And so that's really, I will tell you, 25 years later, that's what a lot of some of this is about. And it's also, certainly as a sole proprietor, what I'm learning and what I need to be doing. And then all the millions of folks I've worked with, both internally as in an architecture firm, and then all of my clients that I've had since. So that's sort of the onus, that if you could tap into that and be thoughtful about that, you're going to be amazed what happens. And when we talk about, great companies, and I have a wonderful firm I'm working with, and we hear of all these people wanting more money. I mean, they just had someone join them for considerably less than what they were making in their last firm, because they want to work in this environment, and they want to be able to do the work that they think they'll have an opportunity to do there. But it was the work environment and the reputation. So not everyone's asking for more money. There's people taking cuts to get into firms that it's going to be important for them.
Yeah, those are good examples. And I think we've got a couple of questions I know queued up about culture. And I just want to reiterate what you said a minute ago. Of course, some of these examples are about larger organizations, but still, as a sole practitioner, solopreneur, whatever term that we use, when we're on our own, we still have, I call it ecosystem sometimes, right? It's the consultants you work with and the client and you said it earlier, contractor, et cetera. So this doesn't have to be, thousands of
right.
person firm that we're talking about.
Well, and I did help facilitate a kickoff session it was a park and rec, big water park with bells and whistles, new for the park system. So we had the water specialist there, we had the contractor, we had the architect, we had some subs. And so a lot of the things in here could be really intentional, because we knew this was only a few months ago, we're going to probably run into some problems. So we need to come together and say, share from each other. What are you experiencing? So what do you need? What do you need? Okay, with everything that we know, how can we organize this differently? Because it's going to be different than we normally do it. And what could that look like? And have that collaboration. I mean, I think that's a great example of using some of these ideas. And a lot of times the architect's the ones leading some of those conversations. And so, what have you learned in the past? What's going on? How do you collaborate? Again, that's an example of saying, here's what we know. Here's what we can anticipate. Here's what I've learned in the last month, contractor. Here's what I've learned, water guy in the last year. Here's what I've learned, and bring that together at that moment in time. So it's the same idea. And I think almost more important, because there's so many stakeholders that are going to be impacted by this. And so I think that's, as a sole proprietor, that's exactly right. I can see those applications in that area.
Do we want to talk about this question, Jeff?
I think we should. I think it's good, and especially related to where we are today with so much remote and hybrid and virtual work.
Okay. Well, I kind of feel like you've already answered this one too, but what if you work from home? I think maybe we were thinking that it
Yeah,
had to be like our physical environment was the art, but it's really the relationships, I feel like you're saying.
it is the relationship. So it's working from home, creating that culture, or working from home, creating these connections.
Just that if we're people working by ourselves out of our homes, can we design a firm that's a work of art?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is all about the connections. When I got a contract on the East Coast, and one of the questions in the interview was, why would I hire you versus maybe someone locally? And I said, you know what? I've coached people even before Zoom was big, even 4 years ago. I've coached people. I've seen their picture. I've never met them. But we have a really great relationship. In fact, one of them, 5 years later, I was in the city where he lived, and we connected, and we were like long lost friends. So I think those connections can still happen there. And again, that's a whole nother webcast. If you've got folks that you're doing, that you're not face to face on how to work on that. But absolutely at home. I think, again, I think that the beauty is how you're doing your business, how you're impacting your client, how you're impacting the world. That's how I look at beauty. So I'm not looking at, listen, I got it all set up for today, so this looks really good background. This isn't the spot where I work all the time. But I think beauty is creating the surroundings and the conditions and the experiences. That's beauty to me.
I don't know if hopefully this isn't lost on everybody else, but I'm thinking back 2 weeks to our Context and Clarity Live conversation with Jesse Cole, who's a very different character than Jane Walton, right? He's the yellow tuxedo guy. But if you'll remember, one of the main things that Jesse talks about is client experience and how people interact and what makes things special and all of that. And there's a real synergy, I think, between what you're saying in a very different way, of course,
Yeah.
than Jesse when he was sitting in a similar chair in his yellow tuxedo with his top hat. So that's
Yeah, I think we underestimate that client experience in architecture because we see the building at the end. And I've seen people who have been so proud of that building, and some clients that look at that building going, that was the biggest pain in my butt. It didn't go the way I thought it was going to. We had these issues. So, what's that legacy that you're leaving there? I think that's equally as important because you're creating someone's dream. When I look at the home I'm in, I had someone help build this great fence. I mean, you're creating this space for folks, and that's very personal. So I think that's equally as important on how gorgeous that building is.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I've got about 6,000 more questions, but I know we're screaming towards the top of the hour here.
Yes.
So um, maybe the best way to wrap this up is to just ask, what's the big takeaway here? We've got a lot of folks in the audience who are small firms, small business owners. What do they need to do today?
Well, when I look through these steps, it's if you create the intention and you create conditions that a great collaborate, because we all have to collaborate. I don't care if you have your own business or not, where collaborations are exquisitely thought through and arranged. You're going to sleep better at night. The result of the building is going to be better. So how do you exquisitely think through and arrange what you're doing every day? And that's really what a lot of this is about. Is really being intentional about those things. You're going
I love that. Great lesson.
Be so much happier, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that's like I said earlier, purposeful is a word I'm using a lot this year. Nice coincidence, but intentionality. We're making decisions, right? Whether they're turning out well or not, we're making decisions. So that's Everybody start being more intentional about the decisions that we make.
If you're more intentional, your business will take off like you've never seen it before. I truly believe that. So it's there's a cause and effect to that. Yeah,
I love that. Love that. That's a great lesson. So that's everybody's assignment for between now and the time you go to bed tonight. Figure out how to be more intentional about the decisions that you're making for your business and your life, for that matter. Jane, thanks a lot. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
Great information, and I love the way that you framed it. Work is Art is the name of Jane's latest book. You can find out more about Jane and get her book and figure out how to work with her by going to janewaltonconsulting.com. So Jane Walton Consulting, smash those three words together like they were one, janewaltonconsulting.com, and just go over there, check that out, order the book, and learn about how to turn your business into a work of art. So Jane, again, thanks. Really appreciate you being here and having this discussion with us today.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Everyone have a good day.
Hey, you too. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and everybody out there in our live audience, thanks. Thanks for being here with us. Thanks for making context and clarity a thing. Because again, I say this every week, but I mean it every single week. If it weren't for you, we would not be having this conversation with Jane right now. So thank you for this. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to Jane and learn these things today. I hope that you can find a way to apply them to your work today. Let's get started today.
Steph, I'll tell you, the work you do, and Katharine and Mark, I mean, it's a lot of work. So I think bravo to you for what you're doing for the industry, because it's a lot of work. So thank you.
Thank you for that. It's as is with you, it's a labor of love. So thank you for that. And it's for this community. It's for all these people that are commenting here. So thanks to all of you. My wish for all of you is to be well and be safe. Please take care of yourself. Take care of those around you. Find a little bit of time to breathe tonight and relax. Find some way to get rejuvenated, because we're going to do this all over again tomorrow, and and that's part of the fun here. So again, thanks everybody. Have a great day, a great night, a great afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. I see Audrey is over there joining us from Australia. I just saw her name pop up there. So thanks to everybody all around the world in this global community, and I hope that I'll see you all somewhere sometime soon. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, guys.